Image is a podcast of Redemption Church located in Huntington, West Virginia for the purpose of equipping believers to fully engage culture in a theologically faithful way.
Okay. Well, first I should just say it's good to be back. I've had a long absence from the podcast, and Brandon Henderson has carried on admirably. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, I got to be a little bit nerdy.
I wish I had a good excuse other than just busy family life. That's pretty much what it was. So, so all right. So we're going to start. I'm going to give you some random Christmas trivia that I found. I'm going to see if you know the answer to it. You're a smart guy. I'm sure you'll probably know most of them. So,
Yeah.
are you ready to receive some trivia?
Okay, if I get stumped, can I phone a friend? And by that, can I just ask Laura?
You can just lean over your right shoulder and yell at your wife. Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. According to historians, what was the origin of what do historians say is the pagan roots of the Christmas holiday? What was the name of the ancient Roman festival that essentially Christmas took the day of?
I will immediately ask Laura. Hey, Laura, what was the pagan Roman festival that Christmas took the place of? Oh, she has this look like she knows this, but it's not coming to her immediately. I would say we're stumped.
Okay, it says it's the ancient Roman festival of Saturnalia was the most anticipated week on the Roman calendar, celebrated every December during the winter solstice. It paid homage to Saturn, the god of time and agriculture. The Romans would take the week off from work, even the slaves, and they would decorate their homes with pine wreaths, light festive candles, attend raucous parties and feasts, and exchange gifts and offerings. It says when the Roman Empire embraced Christianity, many of these traditions were carried over to the celebration of Christmas. We, I guess, adopted some of those things. So, all right, I think you'll know this one because I think you referenced it when we were talking about it right before we recorded. It says, was Jesus really born on December 25th, at least by some historical evidence?
I believe, well, some scholars will say yes, but I think most of them say no. And basically, the celebration was moved for, I think it was just ease of time, ease of access. Is that how it is?
Yeah, the blurb here I have says that there's not a whole lot of solid evidence that he was actually born in December. There's some clues in the biblical account that it's maybe a spring birth, like you have shepherds tending flocks, which they generally do that in warmer weather, I would assume. And I think I've read that there's actually some astronomical evidence of like star charts that you can date back to that show that if they were actually following us like stars, like they were, or at least when the three wise men were doing that. I realized that was a couple years later, but that was probably in the springtime instead of the winter. So, all right. I didn't know this till I found this random question. What is a Yule log? What's a Yule log?
What is a Yule log? Man, I'm tempted to just Google this.
The blurb I have says it's an Iron Age tradition of burning huge logs to ring in the new year. It evolved over centuries into a rich Christmas dessert made of a rolled sponge cake and whipped cream. At the end of December, I didn't even know it was a dessert until I read that. At the end of December, Celtic and Gaelic cultures used to decorate a large log with holly pine cones and a splash of wine, and then they would burn it to cleanse the old year and usher in the spring. And then it eventually became a log-shaped cake. I generally like log-shaped cakes. All right. It says, why do we kiss under the mistletoe?
Yeah, I don't know that either. You're going to have to tell me.
It says it comes from Norse mythology. It says in which Frigg, the goddess of love, I didn't even know that was their name, promised to kiss any creature that passed beneath the evergreen sprig after it was used to revive her son Balder from the dead after initially killing him. Because, weird stuff happens in Norse mythology. The Celtic Druids also saw mistletoe, which blossoms in the winter, as a sacred symbol of fertility. So, there you go.
Okay.
All right, here's one that I knew before I read this, and I think Anna actually told me this a couple years ago. Um, what's the origin of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? How did that story begin?
Um, man, I don't know any of these.
It actually has only been around since 1939, so it's not really that old of a story. In 1939, retail giant Montgomery Ward came up with the idea of writing its own Christmas book to hand out to kids during the holiday shopping season. They had a copywriter named Robert May who took inspiration from his daughter's love of reindeer at the zoo and his own childhood as a small, shy kid who was never invited to play sports. And so that gave him the idea to invent that character. So it was just it was an ad campaign
Huh.
from Montgomery Ward. So
So an ad campaign that literally just took over like the whole theme of Christmas and became its own giant.
yes, we literally watched the old claymation, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer last night here. So which is it still holds up. Anyway, there's one more question if you wanted it.
Okay, let's do it. Let's see if I can get. I mean,
Um,
I've sort of got one, but I just it's been a whiff for every single one of the other questions.
can you name the year approximately in which Christmas literally stopped a war, at least momentarily?
I have no hope on this one either.
So with
Yeah.
this is actually a true story. On December 7th of 1914, 5 months into the outbreak of fighting in World War I, Pope Benedict called for a temporary ceasefire during the Christmas season. Military leaders on all sides ignored that request, but the troops in the trenches responded. As night fell on Christmas Eve, sounds of Christmas carols began ringing out in German and English across no man's land. If you're not a war historian or you don't care about that stuff like I do, essentially it's these trenches, and then on barbed wire on each side, like a couple hundred yards apart, you have each line of the war. The next morning, unarmed German soldiers approached the British lines shouting Merry Christmas, and they were met with hearty handshakes, gifts of chocolate and cigarettes, and a spirited game of soccer. Unfortunately, that Christmas truce was short lived, and it was not repeated in the next years, but it does speak to our shared sense of humanity even in dark moments. So I thought that was kind of neat. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
true story.
Yeah.
They
Well,
actually took a break from shooting and trying to kill each other, and had an evening of Christmas celebration,
and they even played soccer.
and they did. So,
Yeah, that is pretty amazing.
all right,
Okay,
now Christmas.
first question. Now we're on to the Brandon questions.
Mhm.
Okay, so what do you think about Christmas now? So I know I gave you an idea of this question, but I'll change it a little bit because we did talk about like stuff that may have been different like now as adults than when we were kids. So what do you think about Christmas now? How does it compare to what you thought about Christmas when you were a kid? Um, in the context that you're a believer and what stands out to you the most.
It might be a little different for me as opposed to some other folks because my chosen vocation being a teacher, like it's a nice time of year because you get some time off, right? You have a Christmas break that you can actually spend time with the family, do fun Christmas stuff around the house with the kids. So it's a little bit more of a relaxing time for me than maybe some other people that get caught up in the hustle and bustle of the holidays because it can be a stressful time too. Um, but as far as like what I think about Christmas now, what stands out to me is just um, I think just how wonderful it is to make it a nice time of year for your own kids. I remember having a great Christmas time as a child as well. My parents were great at that too, and I had my twin brother that we grew up with. We grew up with each other, and it was always just a wonderful time to celebrate family and to and you always know the Christmas story, but it's always good to review at least once a year just that story of Jesus's birth and how important it is to our theology. So That's just mostly what I think about. Just probably like everybody else, it's all sorts of Christmas stuff with the family, with some theology and church review thrown in there, and of course, like even at Redemption, we I don't actually know if we do this every single year, but we do somewhat of a Christmas review every year, I would think. So, what about yourself, Brandon? What stands out to
Definitely,
you?
definitely family. I'm earlier in my marriage, I was definitely a Scrooge. Like, I wasn't a big Christmas person. I think part of that was because my mom was the Christmas person, and when I was young, she passed away, and so like Christmas wasn't really a thing for for my dad and my brother growing up. Then I met Laura. Laura was very much into Christmas with her family. She grew up in a church and they had these traditions of, like their own, like the Christmas Eve with the family, Christmas Eve service at the church, and then, lots of Christmas routines with her family. And
Hmm.
so now I've grown to think of it as like it's, just a great time to be with the family. Like I really like her family. And then being with, so usually we'll do something with Laura, myself, and the twins. And so it's great for the four of us. And then usually like a week later, we'll go to her family and like, her sisters will be there, their kids, and then Laura's parents. But also more so, um, since moving here, this is the first time where I can actually get like 2 weeks off. All the other places where I've been a scientist at a medical school, I mean, I remember being in the lab Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, at least for a little bit to like set stuff up. We kind of just never really shut down. But, a lot of the people
Hmm.
I work with, even the clinicians, it's, they're like, okay, what are you going to do with your 2 weeks? It's like, since everyone's family friendly, kind of makes more room for that. And it's been great. And then as you know, it's a great time for teaching the kids. Because we can do Advent stuff, and so we have an Advent calendar, so we can like read specific sections of the Bible, have them talk to us about, okay, what do you know about this? What have you learned? What do you think of this? And it's been a good time.
It's funny. This is me tattling on myself, but
Yeah,
we my wife got me a little a Simpsons Halloween Advent calendar that we used for Halloween, and I spaced on doing the real Christmas Advent. That's
yeah.
sorry. I probably shouldn't confess that, but
Yeah. Well, it is hard. So we had to change it up a bit. So some like we don't really we have a kids Bible, but we haven't used that in a while. We've been transitioning the kids to, okay, this is the Bible. Well, this is one of the Bibles that mommy and daddy use. Like we'll just read straight from that.
Mhm.
Sometimes we'll go through things that are really easy for them to grasp. And then some things like Laura picked something from the Old Testament a few nights ago, and like half of a verse in, you can just see their mind just going off on a journey. So
Yeah.
sometimes what we've done is like I'll pull out my guitar, we'll play like one of the church songs that they know, and then they'll sing along, and then we'll kind of do a lesson based upon that. Like, so based on the words of the song, what does this tell you? What does this tell you about Jesus? And then I'll admit we bribe them. So if they get through the story and the lesson, they can provide feedback. We give them some chocolate. So because we have one of those advent calendars, it's like a little doors, you pull open the doors, and there's a Hershey kiss inside.
Mhm.
So, so yes, we do in a way bribe the kids.
I should also add, I mean, I'm not to throw in like any church like self promotion necessarily, but I really enjoy like lessons and carols now. Like it's something I'd never even heard of until Brandon and Ann started doing it with our church, and now every year I look forward not just to being a drummer occasionally in it, but just to enjoying that service. Like it's such an interesting thing that we don't really do in America, except
Mhm.
for Brianna. So I just think that's
Yeah,
really cool. So,
yeah. Well, I do enjoy the last few years, we've been able to get people that aren't part of the church to come,
mhm.
and some of those people have stayed. So I know you know
And it's a good. We got a guy that in our Goscom, Brent, who played guitar for it. So maybe he'll usher his way onto the stage at some point. Maybe.
Yeah. 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 So like, a year ago he came to Lessons and Carols with
Hmm.
his family, with his wife Lucy and his two kids. And then they're like, that was great. And then eventually they came to the church and now they're members. So
Pretty cool.
yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, that is definitely a fun time. And kudos to Brianna because I mean that's a lot of work for her to get it all together. And it's fun. And since we're on the stage, we can't hear everything that's happening. Everybody says it sounds amazing, and everything I can hear from my back in the corner, like the choir definitely sounds good. But yeah, I mean I the way it's mixed with the lessons, I think it's a great lead up to the Christmas Day celebration. So definitely one of
It's a
my
great. It's a great hook. It really is a great hook.
yeah. So, your trivia question was about like, was Jesus born in the winter? Was he born in the spring? But when we think about like, you know, the scope of history, why do you think God chose when Jesus came, why do you think God chose that moment?
Like historically in the Jewish people, essentially.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even know if I could hazard a guess. But I mean, like Josh has mentioned in the sermon in recent weeks, that God had essentially been silent for hundreds of years at that point.
Yep.
And,
400,
no
400
prophet.
years.
Yeah, 400 years, like no prophet, no news from God, no word. You're under the yoke of a foreign power. You have no autonomy, and it I would say it really I would say it really felt to them like God had abandoned them. Right? That's probably what it felt like. So I don't know why God would choose that particular moment in history to reveal His grand plan. Other than like when you're at your absolute lowest, sometimes it makes a really great, compelling story to suddenly like end up on top, like a severe underdog story, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's for a great story.
Initially, I was kind of thinking about. So we went through, the minor prophets in the previous series, and that basically was the lead up to like the 400 years of silence, and part of my mind was like, well, maybe that long period of silence is part of the punishment of all the things that happened that led up, so with the kingdom splitting and all the people that were ruling the kingdoms, whether it was Judah or Israel, um, they were not following God, and that was God. God created he ushered in the period of silence because, well, if you guys aren't following me, well, guess what? I'm gonna leave you for a bit, but I'll come back. I mean, because obviously he had the promises. He had the promises that he was gonna make his kingdom. Laura and I, we talk about like, things that are above our pay grade. There's things that we'll never know. Like, when is Jesus going to come back? Like, we'll never know that. And if anyone does say they know that, well, then obviously they're lying because, Jesus himself says that no one will know the day. So,
Correct.
yeah, this is one that's, above our pay grade, um, but I think that,
And again, like if you're thinking about this, we're thinking about this like from a Christian viewpoint.
mhm.
If you're thinking about this from a standpoint of Judaism or Jewish folks, like they think they're still waiting, right? Am I wrong about that?
You were right. Yeah, there. So I grew up with a lot of Jewish people because there was there's a high well I want no I want to say a high percentage, but there was a sizable Jewish community in the farm town that I grew up in, and so I
Hmm.
had a lot of friends in my elementary, middle school, and high school that were Jewish. And then I remember talking to them about this even as, we were in college. And yeah, from their perspective, like the Messiah is still yet to come. And so they're
Yeah.
still waiting. And I remember asking them, it's like, well, what about the things that, were, the things that are written in the Torah that are the signs of the Messiah coming. There are things that match Jesus. What do you say about that? And one of them, told me frankly, well, we just don't think about that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so a lot of my Jewish friends, to me, it seems like they're just in a rhythm, like this is what they do. And a lot of my Jewish friends, I'm sure that there are ones that are not like this, but a lot of my Jewish friends, some of the Jewish people I work with, to them it's like they're just going through the motions. Like they don't really think about why they do this. It's cultural. So, you know what
Yes.
I mean?
Which, I mean, to be fair, Christianity has their own version of that. There's cultural Christians as well, but I get what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Oh yeah. I have a lot of family that are cultural Christians. So
Mhm.
they show up for Christmas service, Easter service, and the rest of the year they just do what they want.
Well, I use the word underdog in that, and you show me this next question we were going to ponder over. I'll throw it out there because I think it's an interesting idea that you
Mhm.
brought up. It says, what does it say about God that He chose such meager beginnings for Jesus? I think throughout the entire biblical narrative, Old Testament and New Testament combined, again, I use the word underdog. God seems to love an underdog in a lot of these stories, like a lot of the Old Testament prophets, the major biblical characters that even just the quote unquote cultural Christians would know,
Yeah,
like big time, old time, like Old Testament heroes. Like they came from a lot. Most of them came from meager beginnings.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that they were underdogs. I mean, look at how did David become king? Right, that's an
yep,
underdog story.
yep. He was a little shepherd boy, and Saul was the tall, imposing king that was chosen by the people.
You could argue that Moses also had same kind of meager underdog story.
Yep, yeah, because he most likely had a speech issue or speech impediment, and that's why he needed Aaron. Um,
Going back even further, I'm thinking like Noah, a guy that objectively seems insane to all the other people around him, not very well respected, and obviously ends up being proven right. But
mhm.
you know, God just seems to love an underdog story. It just makes a great story. Doesn't everybody love a good underdog story? I love those kind of stories.
Remember the Titans.
Yeah, it's fantastic. If I see that movie on cable, like I'm just okay. I guess that's what I'm watching. This is a
Yeah,
great movie.
yeah. Um,
I mean, I think that God does have an essential nature, and that essential nature just kind of peaks out sometimes. Like there are some through lines that kind of pop up all over the place in the Bible that shows God's nature, and I think that underdog story is part of it. He just
mhm.
seems to love that story, and I would go so far as to say that He's made us love that kind of story too. So,
Yeah. Well, I think part of it, so we can see ourselves in those stories because when we think about it, the everyday person is not going to be the person that's most equipped for whatever the task is that they have in front of them. A lot of us, we're flying by the seat of our pants, whether it's like the way we parent, the way we do our job, the way that we adult. Sometimes like even we can be fully prepared and fully equipped for like one section of our life, but then there's a lot of things that we can't fully control. And so
mhm.
I think that makes it relatable, and I that is probably one of the intentions that God has is for us to feel, that could be us. We can be that kind of person. And we can see that also in some of the people that Jesus picked as his disciples. I mean, the reason why I love Peter is because I can see myself doing all the stupid stuff that Peter did. Like, uh, whether it's like the kind of like the silly things he would say, the silly things that he would do, like, and even like, some of his major faults, like when he denied Jesus because he was afraid. It's like it shows like, okay, Peter was afraid, Peter did this, but still look at what Peter did. Like, Peter,
Mhm.
and he rose above those failures, still continued on, and look at what he accomplished. And so I think that kind of shows, okay, um, the things that we may have laid out in front of us are daunting, but it's still possible if we kind of keep persevering and pressing forward. So I think that's one, it's attractive, but also tells us that we in our humanness, we can accomplish things.
I totally agree. I know Josh has mentioned in his sermons before that this is Christmas is a unique time for the Christian faith for another reason too, is that it's obviously it's become a secular holiday, right? We all know this,
Hmm.
um, but it's also he said this on several occasions too, that they're singing our songs, right? Like people without even realizing it are hearing the theology of Christianity when they sing just the Christmas song that's playing in the Starbucks, right?
Hmm.
What would you say are the pros and the cons of Christmas becoming so secularly well known?
Well, the con, I guess we'll start with the downside. So the con is that they can hear these things and still not be transformed. So they can sing these things and it's not really changing their life. So Christmas will end and they'll kind of just go about their life. The pro is that, for example, we just talked about how we can invite people to things like lessons and carols. And sometimes these people are people that may not traditionally come to a church or traditionally hear a message. Um, so that people can be more sensitive. So you can, ask a person. So I was at Starbucks today, or not Starbucks. I was walking by the Starbucks in Target because I was going to get some medicine for the kids. And
Mm-hmm.
it's easy just to say Merry Christmas to a person while you're waiting in line, and then have that conversation start into something else. And I think people are more open to talk about these things. And I think they're more open to engage with things that are at least adjacent to Jesus and faith. And because you can engage in those things that may be adjacent, that provides an opportunity to kind of press in and then go directly to asking someone about their faith. Do they go to a church? Hey, we have this thing, we're going to be singing some songs, you know, it'll be great. Just come. And so I think that's the pro. People are more sensitive. We can engage. We can, kind of lowers the bar or the threshold for, how difficult evangelism can be. So that's the obvious pro.
Yeah, I agree. It's it provides you a foot in the door to really hone in on Christian faith and witness in the holiday season. But there's also the crass commercialism, which always just gets on me. The constant buying of things. So which
Yeah,
we kind of train our kids to not be so excited about that. Of course, we buy them gifts, but we're like, hey, this is not really why we celebrate this holiday, kids. By the way, so enjoy your gifts.
yeah.
But
Well, I don't. So I'll ask you a question, and this probably goes like out of like the I guess the theme of what we're discussing. But so I feel
mhm.
lucky and blessed that our twins, like they don't ask for a lot of stuff. Um, they're very relational, and so like I think they're more interested in experiences, and because they have each other, they have like there's a lot of friends that they're close with at the church, and like that's the things that they care about. And like you're a twin. Did you feel like since you kind of grew up with someone, you can kind of like navigate like the you probably as a young person were like stuff is great, but I have this twin brother. He's pretty cool. Like
Yeah. You always had your best friend there with you, and
yeah,
even when we did get big gifts, it was usually something that we would share together.
yeah.
So there was always a sharing family kind of thing going on with like bigger gifts.
Hmm. I will say, so speaking of your kids and then our kids, so I mean, the other thing that our kids want is just time with their friends. So, like
Hmm.
they were sick, so they missed the GOSCOM party, and man, they were bummed. Like they just like like the kids at GOSCOM Like that's like, okay, they wanted to have a Christmas party, and because they missed it, like they're like, okay, Daddy, you know, for Christmas, can you just have a party? I'm like, well, why do you want to have a party? He's like, okay, you can have your friends come over, like Cade, Elkins, and Mr. Miller, and so they list like, the adult friends, and that's like, wait, you
Yeah.
want the parents of your church friends to come? Well, yeah. So, so in their mind,
Because they'll bring my friends with them.
yeah, so basically they're like, okay, the Pewitt girls, the Miller kids, and they listed a bunch of other people, and then so that those were, the parents of those kids were the ones that they're like, okay, we want you to have a party and have these people, and it was obvious like, okay, they want their church friends to come over to the house, so which I like, man. I'm very happy that our kids love the other kids at church and they feel safe there. And they're obviously learning things because there's times where we'll be driving home from church and Laura and I will be talking about something and they'll be like, oh, we talked about that at kids' church. So
Mhm.
it's a
I'm
Christmas
trying to find
miracle. Our kids are paying attention.
there was like a C.S. Lewis quote I'm trying to find here. I'm trying to look it up. That made me think of that. And it's a little bit of a Christmassy kind of spirit. If I can find it here, hold on. I'm downstairs, so my internet is not very good. I can't look it up right now.
Hold on,
He
let me
essentially talks about no, he essentially talks about how there's no greater like goal of humanity than to sit with friends around a meal and just fellowship together, essentially. So it's good. I mean, I want to engender that in my kids for Christmas, like just fellowshipping with friends and family, sharing a meal together. Sure, the gifts are nice, but that's not really the point. So,
yeah. Yeah.
all right, man. Good to be back. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we're good, especially since one of the twins just woke up.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can hear more of Image on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast at, or at redemptionwv.com/image, where you can also find any resources mentioned in our podcast and links to follow us on social media. And you can join the conversation by contacting us with any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions. Also, please rate our podcast and write a review at wherever you get your podcast, and that will help us ensure that this content gets to more people.